So before we start programming, we need to know how to basically communicate with the computer as a start. And the way that I think basically everybody's used to doing that is with using the graphical user interface, which is kind of everything you can see and intuitively interact with on the screen. It allows us to use a mouse to navigate through the different folders on a computer, move things around, open, close applications, and a lot more. But some applications don't come with an interface. So you probably might not know any of these so far, but we're going to take a look at them. And if they do come with an interface, you might not be able to use as much functionality as you could if you interacted with it directly through code. And the way to interact with applications through code is through using the command line interface, which is also called the terminal. So there are some tools such as Git, Docker, Airflow, which are really powerful in the AI industry, and they are almost always controlled using the terminal. And the terminal processes commands to a computer program in the form of lines of text. So these commands allow you not only to manage the mentioned applications, but they also allow you to access the operating system services. So the way I think about it really is that the terminal is just a way of directly talking to the computer operating system. And you can do that through very succinct, exact commands. So here, I want to show you how to use the basic commands in your terminal and get you familiar with the command line interface. And once you do that, you should be able to use it with much more interesting applications and build on top of this as we go forward. I'll just mention one thing as well, so remember, which is that you might hear the acronym CLI, which is short for command line interface. So all that means is the terminal. At this point, you should have already dual booted your Windows machine onto Linux. So you should either be running Linux or Mac. Windows isn't an operating system designed for software development, and if you continue to use it, then you're basically just going to face a lot more problems down the line. So it's just my strongest recommendation to start using an industry standard operating system for software development, and that would be either any distribution of Linux or Mac. So let's open up the terminal to see the most useful commands that you should know about. One of the very first things you should know is what folder is your terminal working from? What's your working directory is what you call it. So directory is just another word for a folder, and your working directory is the directory which the terminal is open in. So when you open up the terminal, it actually is in a specific location. So when you try and run programs, it's expecting them to be in this folder, or you point to the direction of where they are from this folder. So that's a very first command we'll look at. To print out the current working directory, you can use the Pwd command, which stands for print working directory. So you can see where I am on my computer. This is the file location relative to the root of my computer. And you can list the items that you've got in this folder using the ls command, which is short for list. So here you can see the files and directories that I've got in this directory. You can add a parameter to the ls command to take a look at specifically what's inside that location. You can specify the location of a folder or file using an absolute or a relative file path. An absolute file path gives the location of that file or folder relative to the very root of your computer. So it starts from the very top and then gives every folder which your current folder or file is nested within. And a relative file path gives the location of that folder from your current directory. And when you specify a path, you separate the folders which contain within each other by /. You can also add what are called flags to the commands you use. So flags are options that you set to a command. They make it do some specific behavior. For example, you can tell the command to show you all the items, including the hidden files. Hidden files or directories are ones which start with a dot. And to use this flag to show everything, including those hidden files, you can use the -a flag. Flags simply follow a command and they've got a dash as a prefix. You might see long form flags where they have 2 dashes as well. So I don't think this is quite correct, but as an example, -a would be short for --all. And there's a long and short form flag for, long and short form version for a lot of different flags. So now you can see the output contains more files, and you can combine adding flags to directories. and you can retrieve all the items in long format using another flag, the -l flag. This one returns a list of items and their content, permissions, owner, size of the file, and last modified date. And flags can also be combined in a single flag in some cases, I believe. So for example, if you want to list all of the items in long format list, then you don't need to write ls-a-l, you can use ls-al to get the same result. So with these examples, you can start to see a pattern on how to use these commands. And basically the command that you use can have flags or arguments. The syntax would be something like name of command, flags, and then arguments. The command is followed by optional flags that add functionality to the command, and then we add the arguments, which are the parameters which go into that command. They might be optional, they might be required, depends on what command you're using. But generally, you have these things separated by spaces. So anytime you include a space, you're telling your terminal that I'm talking about the next parameter or the next flag. And so one thing to be careful there is you don't want to have file names or folder names with spaces in, because if you add that space, it's going to think that you're talking about a new parameter. And if you do have that, then you should put quote marks around them. So now that we've written these commands, what language are they in, actually? They're probably in Bash, or they're in something similar, but it's a shell scripting language which is used for talking directly to the operating system. So what if we don't know how to use a particular command? Well, we can obviously look it up, but we can also use another command to help us figure that out. So you can check the flags and arguments of a command as long as you know its name by using the man command followed by the command name which you want to get help with. For example, let's see the options you can use with ls by doing man ls. The man is short for the manual, and what this does is it pops up the manual, and you can then see the description and the list of flags, and you can exit this by pressing Q, which is short for quit. So now that you can see all the different files you've got, we need to learn about how to move between different locations on a computer. Like I said, this is really important because any file or program you try and reference is going to expect you to either have that file in the current working directory, or it's going to expect you to point to it relative to this directory. So commonly you might try and run, say a Python file, and you might get an error saying it's not found because you're not in the same location as you should be. So what you need to do is change directory. And the shortcut for that, or the command I should say, is cd. So cd, short for change directory. And just like ls, it can take in a path which will then move you to that directory. So you can move to the desktop by doing cd desktop. And you can check the files that you've got in there using ls, and now you can see that they're different from where we were previously. But you can also see that they're the same as the Graphical Explorer. So just to really highlight things here, the terminal can do everything that the graphical user interface can do. And what I'm doing here of moving around different folders, looking at what's in different folders, is just the command line version of me using this graphical file explorer. So now I'm inside this folder, I need to get back out. But now I'm in here, there's no folder which represents the parent directory, the one above, which I just came from. So the parent directory is represented by two dots, ... So that's one of the things that showed up when we showed all, including the hidden files, ... and ... The ... represents the parent folder, and the dot represents the current folder. So if we do cd ... and then run pwd, you can see you're back in the parent directory. Every computer should have what's called a home directory, which is a directory the terminal opens when it starts. It's represented by what's called a tilde. That's this little sign, the wave. And regardless of the directory you're in, you can always type cd tilde and it will take us to the home directory. But actually, cd doesn't need to take in a parameter, and by default, it will have tilde as the argument. So if you just type cd, wherever you are, you'll go to the home directory. If you press the up arrow, it's going to show you the commands that you've run previously. So instead of having to retype a long command which you've previously done, you can just hit up until you find that and then run it again by pressing enter. Whenever I say run, by the way, what I mean is just hit enter after you've typed that command. So the terminal can again, do everything that you can do graphically. So of course you can edit, remove, delete files and all those kind of things. So let's take a look at that. So let's move to this folder to create a new directory. So now that you're here, we can create a new directory using the Pwd command, make directory. We need to pass the name of the directory as the first parameter. So let's do that. And now notice in the background in this file explorer, you can see a new file has been created. And if you do ls, then you'll see that that file has indeed been created. So first, let's move inside this directory by typing cd, and then the folder name. And then you can use the terminal to create files and directories. To create an empty file, you can use the command touch followed by the name of the file that you want to create. So if you create a file named test.txt, you could just do that by doing touch test.txt. And now you can see the text file has been created in this directory. So to edit this, you can use a text editor. A popular one is Nano. I much prefer Vim. Vim is a more powerful editor, but it's a little more complicated to use. If you want to use it, then just run Vim Tutor, and that'll give you a little tutorial on better than I can. I highly recommend you getting used to that and using it. It'll make you a really powerful programmer, and I'll give you extra points if you learn how to use Vim too. But for here, I'll show you how to do it in Nano. So let's run Nano and then name of the file. This opens a new window, allows us to modify that file. So let's just put some random text in here. And then once we're happy, press Ctrl-O to save the changes, Ctrl-X to exit the editor. So to see the content of a file, you can use the cat command followed by the file you want to look at. So cat is short for concatenate. If you give it named to two files, it'll stack their output together into one long piece of text. But it's also kind of, practically used for just displaying a single file by giving a single file name. So let's take a look at the contents there, and yep, it looks like what we put inside it, so that's nice. So let's create another directory inside this one. Let's do make directory my folder. And we can move a file to another directory using the mv command. So if we want to move this file inside there, we can do mv test.txt my folder /text.txt. And you can see the file's been moved to the directory. So let's move inside there and take a look. But one thing I'll really point out here, a key trick is using tab completion. So I don't have to type out the name of the whole folder, because there's only one option which this can be the start of. So at this point, if I just hit tab, it's going to complete the only remaining option for me, and that means I can write these commands a lot quicker. So tab complete that and then run that command. Looks good. So in addition to moving files, you can also copy them using the cp command, which works in a very similar way. So let's copy this file into the parent directory. And the window on the right hand side, you can see that this has appeared, but the original file is still there, meaning that certainly we've created a copy rather than just move the file as we did previously. So let's move to that parent directory to see how to delete files. You can delete a file using rm, which is short for remove. So to delete this, you can do rm name of file. And as you can see, the file's been removed. You can also remove directories using the same command. So let's run rm this. Okay, so this can't be removed easily because it's a directory, but we can add the -r flag to rm that recursively removes things. So let's run rm-r, and that looks like it's removed it. So this is one place, just be really careful where you're using this, because the terminal has no forgiveness. If you screw something up and run a command that isn't quite what you wanted, then there's going to be no undo, there's going to be no trash to get things out of. So be careful of using this command in particular, and be careful if you add the -f flag on the end of that as well. Be very careful of that. So you can also run commands that will print something to the output, and to do this you can use echo. So echo, you simply follow it with whatever you want to print out. So if you want to print out hello world, you could just put something like this. But to understand how this works, you've got to know that there are three basic what are called channels: standard input, standard output, and standard error. And these are different places where information can go in and out. So the standard input channel takes in the input from us. So for example, through the keyboard. and the standard output channel exposes messages from the computer, for example, through this display. And the standard error channel exposes error message in case something went wrong with the command. So if everything works fine, the echo command will expose the message through the standard output channel. But you can also redirect messages to a specific location. Let's say you want to have a file where it stores all of your outputs. Well, then you could just redirect the output of this echo command into a file by using this angled bracket syntax. And this is called redirection. So the output's not displayed because instead of going to the standard output, it's gone to a file named new.txt. And using a single greater than sign is going to create a new file. So let's take a look inside that file, and here it shows that our output has been dumped into that file. So let's run another echo command with a redirection and a different sentence into the same file. And we can see the new content by, again, just catting that file. And you can see that it's overwritten what was previously there. So maybe that's not quite what we wanted. And if we want to append to a file instead of overwrite, then we need to use a slightly different version of redirection. So if you want to add new content, then you should use 2 greater than signs. So if I run this here, it's going to append rather than overwrite what's in that file. So you can see now this has got these 2 lines, and that means we've appended this output to the end. So now looking at our terminal, the command line is full of commands that we've run, and it looks a bit messy. So another simple thing we can do is use the clear command. What that does is it just clears everything on our screen and gets us a nice tidy terminal again. Something that you might want to do, which can be quite useful, is create what are called aliases. So aliases are basically shortcuts for commands. So let's say that you find yourself always typing cd ... and you want to find a shorter way to write that. So we could set an alias for that command by running something like this. So specify that we're creating an alias, we specify what we want our shortcut to be, and what we want it to be equal to. So now, if you type that, it's going to run cd ... But you've got to be careful because these aliases won't persist after you close the terminal. So to finish off, let's explain kind of briefly what happens when the terminal is opened and how we can set aliases which persist between different terminal sessions. So when you open the terminal, it's going to automatically run commands contained in a particular file. And by default, that file is the .bashrc file in the home directory. You might be using a different terminal shell. It might be ZSH, in which case you might have .zshrc, so just take a look at that. And you should be able to see what terminal you're running by looking at the top of that terminal window. So let's edit our bashrc file, and we could add aliases to our bashrc. And what that's going to do is it's going to run that bashrc every time we open a new terminal, and that is going to define these variables. So that means that they'll persist between different terminal sessions because they'll be redefined as aliases every time I open a new terminal. So what did we just see? We just saw kind of that you can access the operating system through the command line interface. It's basically a way to talk directly with your computer using a programming language, which is probably Bash. And what you have is commands which often take in flags and arguments, which are separated by spaces. Anytime you see a space, you're talking about the next flag or parameter. And we saw kind of some of the key basic commands that you can use there. So things for moving around, editing files, and basically anything that you want to do graphically, you can do it in the command line as well. So it's dead important that you get used to using the terminal because you can just do so much with it. And there are so many tools which are purely based on being able to use the command line. So I'll leave you to practice that and let's get on with it.